Unspoken Issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. We have returned. We have got a treat for you. One of the first times I've ever read a Batman. Oh, wait a second. I've read Batman plenty of times. I have never read a Darkness comic before. So The Darkness, I should say. I love Mark Silvestri. I've never read The Darkness. And Chris Armstrong over there, he's the one that came up with this idea. You threw a few things at me. And why don't you let our listeners know why this was on the list and the ones you gave me the option to choose.
I've long thought that this would be an interesting one to look at because The Darkness doesn't have a lot of intercompany crossovers that I can recall that feature the Darkness Jackie Estacado character. I don't have a huge history with this character. I got the first issue when it dropped back in the late 90s. I was excited to see Garth Ennis and Mark Silvestri do a book. This is before I realized Garth Ennis sucked. And I thought it would actually be good. I remember getting the first one or two issues, and then I dropped off of it. And then later, when Dale Keown did some Darkness comics in the early to mid 2000s, and a crossover with the Hulk, I think, as well. I read some of that stuff, but I didn't dive in too deep into the Darkness stuff until more recently on Hoopla. I found a compendium of maybe the first 50 issues, something like that. So I read a handful of early Darkness era stuff from that collection, which fits right into this era. I think there was an ad in this issue for Darkness 25. So this is probably about 2 years into the Darkness lifespan. What was this, 1999? I think this barely got into...
It was on sale July of 99. Cover's date is August of 99.
But the Darkness is like he's kind of a lesser 90s staple. Like, it is definitely a 90s character, but he's not one of the heavy hitters like the early Image Founders books or some of the big 90s Marvel and DC stuff.
Right. So yeah, like I said, cover date August 1999. Written by Scott Lobdell and Jeff Loeb, two big writers coming out of the 90s. I couldn't tell where the writing was split, just looking off of Mike's Amazing World of Comics, but I know they're both credited. Penciled by Mark Silvestri, David Finch, Clarence Lansing. Inked by a lot of people. We got Joby Weems, Danny Meeke, which is a name I recognize, Victor Lamas, Matt Banning, and John Livesay. So that is your inking department there. Lettered by Richard Starkings and Wes Abbott, and colored by Christian Lichtner. I've got a breakdown of Jeff Loeb and his career here because I think this book happens at a point in Jeff Loeb's career we should definitely talk about because we're about ready to close out the 90s. Jeff Loeb is definitely making a name for himself. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about before I get into that?
This is a Top Cow crossover with DC. They had split from Image a few years earlier. I think it was part of the whole thing where Silvestri thought some of his talent was getting poached by other creators. I think this is around the time the Liefeld split happened, and then it was kind of short-lived, and Top Cow rejoined the Image fold. But this is like the second wave of the Top Cow universally, because it started out with Cyberforce. Witchblade became a big hit, and
Witchblade,
like 96 or 97,
right?
And Dark came out right after that. So then it was a lot of Top Cow stuff was leaning more in towards like supernatural, type stuff, type characters, darker, really
occult.
Yeah, there was also Weapon Zero, a sci-fi thing. The brand of Top Cow kind of was more represented by like the Witchblade and Darkness stuff.
Right.
I think Rob Liefeld even credited on their Observation podcast. He talked about Silvestri, who he's speaks glowingly of always.
Yeah, he does.
And he talked about how when they did the Image X crossover month, Silvestri did that Spawn issue, and it seemed like Silvestri really enjoyed that type of a character, working on that type of character, and that influenced the way he did stuff after that. So there's probably some truth to that. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of point out this is like Top Cow's second wave, which is a kind of interesting era for them in the late 90s.
Yeah. I mean, Silvestri, I know for mainly the first time I ever saw Silvestri was in the X-books when he's specifically Inferno. But of course, Cyberforce, baby. You mentioned Liefeld. I think Heroes Reborn happens in 98? Or is it 96?
Yeah.
So what's Liefeld doing at this point then in 99? So he's like...
this would have been the Awesome Comics era, or maybe Awesome had folded by this time. I know in 2000 he came back and did some Wolverine issues, and then he kind of took a sabbatical of sorts for a few years after that.
I'm hopping over here real quick to take a look and see if he's got any credits around this time. So there are only 5 comics that he is credited with. Cable. Yes, Cable 71, 73, and 75. He pencils those. Avengilin number 1. And then that's Awesome Comics, which at this point, you're right. Awesome. It's Maximum with Cybrid number 0. He's plotter penciler 97. That's in the middle of the Heroes Reborn stuff, or near the end of it anyway. And then Awesome Comics hits with Judgment Day Alpha number 1 in June of 97. So he's doing some Awesome Comic stuff. And the only other one he got credited for in 99 is Supreme the Return number 3 as the anchor of all things. So yeah, let me switch gears here and talk a little bit about Jeff Loeb.
Sure.
Jeff Loeb's work in the 90s, his first comic is actually in the 90s. It's in 1991. He writes 1991's Challengers of the Unknown, number 1 through 8. He then makes his way to Superman and does a story in Action Comics Annual number 5. He also introduces a character by the name of Loose Cannon at this point.
I remember seeing things about him.
I saw a picture. He's a blue dude. I don't know much about him. Loose Cannon. In 93, he begins a tradition of Halloween specials for Batman Legends of the Dark Knight. They end up getting collected as a trade or something there later on called Batman Haunted Night. This is where I realized that I read a lot of Jeff Loeb and did not pay attention. That's when he makes his way to Marvel. He's working with Cable and X-Force. Cable number 15 through 39. He wrote that. And X-Force number 44 through 61. He also launches X-Man in 95. He did Wolverine Gambit Victims, which I have bookmarked. I've never read it, but I always thought it was interesting. It was a...
that's tale as well, right? I haven't read that either, but...
Yeah. Then he gets into, between 96 and 99, that's where we get The Long Halloween, which I've done on source material. Also, he does Superman for All Seasons in 98. And then Dark Victory, which is the follow-up to The Long Halloween in 99. And I think he's in the middle of doing that when he's writing this, if I remember correctly. He was also a key writer during the Heroes Reborn era. He wrote the first several issues of the 1996 Captain America and Avenger relaunches. He scripts Iron Man number 7 through 12 in 97. And over in Awesome Comics, he ventures into a title called The Coven and The Fighting American.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of where we land with our crossover with the Darkness in Batman. I don't know if he's written any Darkness comics, but I know he's writing Batman for sure. He's definitely wrote some Batman at this point. So what is the Darkness? I've got a list here, but I'll be glad to turn it over to you if you feel more comfortable telling our listeners what the Darkness is.
So Jackie Estacado is a mob hitman who, I believe on his 21st birthday, develops these powers inherent in his biology where I guess the power is just called the Darkness, and gives him this supernatural armor and some, powers. But most interestingly, it gives him control of creatures that can come out of the dark and sort of do his bidding. They're called Darklings. And that's kind of the gist of it. The hitch in the power is if he procreates, as soon as he gets a woman pregnant, he will immediately die, and his power will be passed on to his child in utero. He can't, and a lot of hay is made in the early issues of The Darkness about what a ladies' man he is. Him not being able to go to Pound Town is a big problem for him. He doesn't like it.
Oh, that's funny.
Can't risk it.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I mean, the 21st birthday thing, you hit that right on the nose. I'll read over the paragraph for the Darkness here because I think you pretty much said it, but I want to make sure I didn't miss anything, too. So, They have it listed as an ancient supernatural force, essentially the embodiment of darkness and chaos. The darkness has existed since the beginning of creation and is locked in an eternal conflict with its opposite force, the Angelus, which that's not going to happen in this comic. That's not even going to be mentioned. Rather than existing on its own, the darkness inhabits a human host, passing down through bloodlines. When it awakens, it grants immense power, shadow creatures, supernatural strength, weapons made of darkness, and it also comes with a curse. The darkness feeds on violence, thrives in shadow, and pushes its host toward darker choices. That's what makes this interesting, because Jackie Estacado works for the mob, right?
Right. He works for the Franchetti family, which is kind of like his adopted family.
Frankie Franchetti, a powerful New York mob boss, takes Jackie from an orphanage and raises him as his nephew, training him to be a professional killer. On the surface, Frankie acts like a father figure, but in reality, he's ruthless, paranoid, abusive, and sees Jackie as property more than family. Jackie, who I think, at first when I was reading this, I was kind of confused, because I was like, oh, he's working for the mob. He's a bad guy. And that's not what actually is going on here. Yeah, he does work for the mob, but he doesn't want to kill innocent people. He's a good guy who's made some pretty bad choices, so he's on the fence, leaning toward the bad side, and now he's got the darkness pushing him over that every once in a while. At least that's the internal struggle I get from Jackie. Would you say you agree?
Well, that's how it's represented here.
Okay.
In the darkness issues that I can recall, he's less worried about being a good guy.
Oh, really? Okay.
This character, the female character whose name's escaping me at the moment,
Jenny Romano.
I believe she was in some early issues of The Darkness. They brought her back into this and just put her in Gotham as where she ended up. He does have feelings for her and everything, but he seems a lot more good-natured than he does in the Darkness issues that I've read.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Just kind of what, Ennis, the super cynical writer, that's kind of his thing, which he did. I don't think he wrote The Darkness super long. I think maybe even Lobdell did some of the later issues, but which we didn't mention Scott Lobdell, I don't think, he was basically the X-Men guy for a long time.
Yeah.
And they definitely portray him in this as being a lot more conflicted, which makes it easier for Batman to not be murdered.
Yeah. That's kind of the handicap that I had going into this, not knowing what happened in any of the issues. I have no idea what this character is or is not supposed to be. So I'm glad to get your insight on that for sure. Let me mention Jenny Romano here, because I think she was the character that you're talking about in the early issues. She and Jackie grew up together in an orphanage. She represents the life Jackie might have had if he hadn't been pulled into the mob. She's grounded, kind, and normal. She's definitely the opposite of the stuff that Jackie is involved in. She's kind of like the anchor to his humanity. By the time we get into this book, they've been separated for a long time. He runs into her, or he sees her here. He knows she's here. Frankie also knows that, and he knows that her presence might be messing with his head and getting him off mission a little bit. Jenny Romano is his first true love, and clearly Jackie still has feelings for her. All right. So this plays out like a crime noir story that slowly slides into supernatural horror. The plot begins when the Franchetti Mafia, led by Uncle Frankie, attempts to expand its New York operations into Gotham City. What starts as a traditional mob turf grab quickly turns strange as Gotham crime bosses are murdered in ways that seem physically impossible. Witnesses describe living shadows and demonic shapes that vanish when exposed to light. These impossible killings draw the attention of Batman, who approaches the case as a detective following the evidence until it points to Frankie's nephew, Jackie, a mob enforcer who secretly wields the ancient supernatural force known as the Darkness. Did you get the sense that Batman knew it was Jackie until the end, or did you think he was just putting things together and then finally Jackie showed up?
I don't remember an aha moment where he figured out specifically that Jackie had this power. I guess it was after their first confrontation on the roof because the Darklings or whatever showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And then he looked more into it. They didn't show a whole lot of the detective work there. He just kind of mentions later, hey, I looked this up, and it turns out he's the bearer of this curse.
When Batman finally confronts Jackie, the story becomes as much psychological as it is physical. Both men are orphans, shaped by trauma and the shadows, but they represent opposite outcomes. Batman has learned to control his darkness while Jackie is still controlled by his. Seen through Jackie's eyes, Batman is less a man than an urban legend, a myth in a cape and cowl that even a hardened mobster hesitates to challenge. Rather than simply trying to stop Jackie, Batman attempts to guide him, recognizing that the real danger isn't Jackie himself, but the darkness consuming him and the criminal family exploiting that power. The emotional core of the story centers on Jenny Romano, Jackie's childhood friend and the last person who connects him to life outside of violence. Encouraged by Jenny, Jackie briefly tries to break away from his uncle's brutal methods to do some good. That hope is shattered when Frankie and his crew storm a Gotham police station and begin to massacre the officers inside, making it clear that Jackie can never coexist with the Franchetti way of life. The story ends with Jackie leaving Gotham changed, no longer just a mob soldier or a victim of his birthright, but someone who has begun to understand that he can choose his own path. Batman remains behind, having stopped the mob's expansion, also stopping Frankie and his goons, possibly saving the day, minus a few Gotham policemen, fully aware that the darkness itself is far from gone. That is our summary of The Darkness / Batman. I'll give you the floor. That summary did a decent job. There might be some stuff we left out as far as the nuances, but what's your thoughts on the book?
Going back to 1999, when I first picked this up, I was excited about it. I dug out my issue that I still have, and I remember being disappointed. I haven't read it since then. I think I liked it a little more this time, maybe just because of the art. I think one of the disappointments I had was the fights between Batman and the Darkness.
Yeah.
Were a little... Batman's just too overmatched to make it too compelling of like a one-on-one fight, between him and the Darkness and all these Darklings. Plus, Batman never really seems invested in defeating him, like, physically, because I guess the connection he has with the girl who really cares a lot about Jackie. The art is really great. I think Silvestri only did the first opening sequence, the first 5 pages where Batman's talking to Gordon and then jumps into the aftermath of one of these slaughterhouses and sees all the Darklings run past him.
There are some points where I can go like, okay, yeah, that's definitely not Silvestri. It just doesn't feel like Silvestri. And then you can see some that you're like, okay, that feels like Silvestri. But you're saying it was only like at the start of this book and then the rest of it's going to be Finch?
I don't know for certain. I was annoyed that there weren't. A lot of times the credits will specifically say who did what.
Pages, right.
This doesn't do that, break it down that way. There's a lot of this stuff that I can clearly tell is David Finch, even though his style has evolved a lot since this era.
Yeah.
But I read a lot. When Finch started, that's another one of the Top Cow supernatural books, Ascension, the book he did in the late 90s that I liked. I don't know if he was ever on the Darkness outside of this. I think he did do some issues of the Darkness, a regular series before this as well. The third penciler is a person I'm not familiar with, Clarence Lassang.
Yeah, Lansing.
So there are some images in here, mostly with character interactions, where there's not a lot of details needed, just 2 characters talking to each other. Some of those pages with less action, maybe he did those. Maybe they were rushing to get this thing done in time. Either way, overall, the art is really strong in the majority of this book.
Yes.
I love the designs of the Darklings, especially that first time we see him where Silvestri's doing it, and he's got the one with the backwards cap.
He's got the Raiders football helmet on.
Yeah. They got a buck-tooth one kind of in there. And that's one of the interesting things about the Darkness is some of these creatures seem to have their own personalities, and he names some of them. He even calls one Hush, which I wondered if that was like a Jeff Loeb touch. Idea.
Yep. That's happening, I think, in what, 2002?
I think.
2003? Yeah.
Interestingly, some of the Darkness issues, I know at one point, Joe Benitez, which I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, who has recently been doing Lady Mechanica and really cool, very detailed artist. He did a lot of Darkness issues, and the way he did the Darklings, a lot of them looked super xenomorphic.
Really?
Like very, very alien looking. Not so much even the full xenomorphs as like a lot of times the baby xenomorphs, like as soon as they burst out of the chest and stuff.
Yeah.
He did a lot of really cool stuff with that. Anyway, back with this one. I also wondered, we get a handful of one-page cameos of these different Batman villains. When it first happened with Two-Face showing up for one page, I was like, I guess David Finch just wanted to draw Two-Face. But then they kept popping up, and part of me also wondered if that was maybe Jeff Loeb's influence, because with Hush, with The Long Halloween, he is always bringing in the full cast of the Rogues Gallery. He likes to spotlight all of them a little bit, so maybe he was trying to do that with this issue as well. Not sure who to credit with that, if it was Lobdell or Jeff Loeb.
I was just going to say, one of my notes here was that this felt like, okay, guys, we're in Gotham, and we are going to show you all of the Rogues Gallery. Yeah. And I know why you came to this comic, ladies and gentlemen. It's to show, I think a lot of it was like, they wanted to deliver on a artistic take. Yeah. And give the people something, because I don't know.
It's Top Cow version of the Joker.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I got, was like, you're here to look at the visuals. We're going to tell you a story. But really, in my opinion, you mentioned how you kind of were disappointed initially when you read this. I kind of got that feeling too, because this is more like, hey, here we are. We're coming into Gotham, and here is a display of everybody that's around here. Not really a whole lot happens. We're kind of anticipating Batman finally going up against the darkness, going up against Jackie, and seeing what he can do. A lot of it's just like Frankie going around and trying to make his way through the crime scene of Gotham. And he's meeting all... We get to see Killer Croc's in this. We get to see Two-Face. We get to see Joker. We get to see... Well, I think, is that about it? Who else shows up?
Catwoman shows up.
Catwoman.
That might be it.
That might be it, yeah. But again, I feel like it's just them going around and bumping into the mob. Are they going to be able to make much of an impact or not? And Batman's kind of like this background character trying to foil them. Regardless, I don't mean that to diminish anything that you felt going through this the second time, but that's kind of what I hit when I was doing this first time. I really wanted something more. Yeah. Like, I thought, when this ended, I thought we were just getting started. And I bet back in the day when you probably picked this up and might have felt a little bit of disappointment, you paid $5.95 for this book. $6. It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. And again, it's DC, it's Top Cow. We're riddled with intercompany crossovers at this point, but regardless, $6, $9.50 Canadian. Jeez Louise. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
That's $3. That's 3 issues of your standard comics at the time. Basically.
Right. So it's beautiful, but again, I feel like it just is one of those, like, this is continued in the Batman Darkness that DC is going to publish.
Yeah, it does feel like maybe there should be a follow-up, kind of like how Marvel and DC always did too.
Yeah.
Of a lot of crossovers.
Yeah.
They had a lot of vertical double-page spreads in this one, which is cool, and it showcases Finch's art really well. He really had a ball drawing this stuff. So this is the first time Silvestri ever drew Batman, at least in an official capacity. And probably the same for David Finch, who would later do the Detective Comics run. They're both really good at it.
Yeah.
I was curious about the Frank Frschetti, how this has taken Darkness. This is almost like an issue of the Darkness guest starring Batman, because of how life changing and status quo changing the stuff that happened in this book is for the Darkness and the Jackie character, especially with him basically giving up the mob boss, Frank. I looked into that a little because I don't remember specifically this being referenced in the Darkness issues I've read, but may have been. But on the Darkness Wiki, there's a section on expansion into Gotham, which covers this issue and talks about how Jackie is going to turn state's evidence against him. And then eventually Jackie, I don't think he actually testifies against him. Frankie ends up getting freed from prison by another mob guy who he teams up with, and they go after Jackie. So it looks like this stuff does lead into stuff that happens in the Darkness issues later. Okay. Unless there's a Batman Darkness book out there that I'm not aware of. I don't think that's the case.
I think at the end of this book, they leave it open. You kind of land on, like, Okay, it's going to be Jackie who testifies or does something to put Frankie behind bars. But I think the way that it's worded is like somebody is planning on turning state's evidence. I don't think it completely names. Let me look at this again and make sure what it says. According to Jim Gordon, an as yet unrevealed source has cut a plea to turn state's evidence against. I mean, who else is going to do it? Again, wondered if that actually fell into the continuity of the darkness and actually, so it sounds like it did in some way, right?
I'm also looking at a plot summary on the Wikipedia, the fandom page for the darkness. This issue, this episode was the first step in the independence and war between Jackie and the Franchetti family. This was an impactful book going forward, it looks like, in the darkness continuity.
Interesting.
Which is kind of weird that they would, like, they can't collect this in the trades and stuff, which I guess they could with special permission from DC and they could work out a deal or whatever, but I don't think that issue's in the
I wouldn't imagine either.
That the books that I've been reading on Hoopla or whatever that collection's called, the compendium or whatever.
Yeah, that's cool though. I think
anyway, that's pretty much all I've got.
Okay. All right, well,
overall I liked it a lot more this time than I did before, and it's mostly just because Finch, even in his early days, can draw the hell out of some cool comic books.
Yeah. All right, my notes, I mean, a lot of this stuff, you know, we've kind of already talked about. My first note was Frankie meeting all these crime bosses in Gotham. He runs into Two-Face. He runs into, I mean, at one point, Killer Croc shows up. It's just a brief where he apparently either gets turned down for a job or something like that. I think it's Frankie. Maybe it's Frankie who was interviewing the Killer Croc.
Yeah, he's like bringing people in. Who's going to take this? Who's going to kill the Batman for me?
Yeah.
And he's like, you don't have what it takes.
Right. Catwoman, help me out here. When she leaves, she says TTFN.
I don't know what that means.
All right. Neither do I. And I guess right now we're going to have to go to Google and look it up. See what in the world this means. Ta-ta for now. All right. There we go. Because she's in the process of leaving.
She thinks she's clever taking the clip out of his gun when he's got it pointed at her. But, like, there's probably still a bullet in the chamber, right? I'm not a gun aficionado. I don't have any guns, but I think that's how it works.
That's funny. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Go back to my notes here. My next thing was, 2-page splashes. We see some beautiful art in this thing. The one that's going to stand out, I'm not going to say, but it might end up as one of our picks. If you don't pick it, I'm picking it. But there's some beautiful art in these, and they go to town and give you your money's worth. They want it to be a visually stunning comic. There are moments in this that are definitely there. Alfred with the Knowledge is my next one. I mentioned this in the synopsis where Alfred says, "How ironic, two men, both orphans, have sought refuge in the shadows. You embrace the darkness. Mr. Estacado is embraced by it." When I was reading this, I'm obviously like looking at, look at these pictures. They're beautiful. But then when you really get to thinking about these two characters standing across from one another, while it's not fully explored by the story, Jeff Loeb is a competent story writer. Do not get me wrong. I feel like there was so much on the bone because of...
There's a few mentions of it, but it's not explored.
Right. So I think as far as characters go, there's a lot more that you could explore, just like you said. In bold, I have "This was short." We talked about it.
For what was, probably, I would assume this is a 48 page, or it does go pretty quickly.
Yeah. This isn't minus a lot of dialogue. There's a fair amount of dialogue in this thing. I was fully expecting at the end to be like, okay, this is the first chapter, right? We're getting to the next chapter. No, that's not the case. That's pretty much all my notes. It's a quick, easy read. If you dig the darkness and you dig Batman, I think there's more here for you art-wise than there is story-wise. Although that gets kind of blown out of the water by the continuity impact you're talking about, because this gets carried over, or at least this is a big thing. So this is kind of one of those must-haves if you're a Darkness fan, because this is a big chapter.
Yeah, you would think.
In Jackie Estacado's life. So, all right, well, that's my notes. Anything else before we pick a panel?
I think that's it.
I'll let you go first here, man. What do you want to pick?
I'm going to go a little simpler than probably some of the... There's a lot of really awesome stuff with all Darkling, fighting Batman and all that stuff. But I'm going to go with, I think this is a splash page between 19 and 20, and it's only the top half of the page, which is the Batmobile racing through the streets of Gotham. I just really like this Batmobile design and the way I assume Finch draws it. That's what I'm going to go with. They're very similar to the Batmobile from the 89.
89. Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking. One of my favorite panels, not the one I'm picking, but one of my favorite panels is on that 2-pager where the Darkling gets his butt burnt. That's pretty funny. He thinks he's smart hanging out in the back of the thruster, which I'm sitting there thinking, how, are you sure this is a good idea? And it turns out it is not.
I don't think they're very smart.
No, they apparently are not. They are not. Okay, so yeah, I mean, the one that I am going with here is the splash page with the Joker. Just his face. If this is Finch going at this is, again, art-wise, it's beautiful. It captures every bit of insanity that the Joker is. He's got that elongated jaw, the stuff you're kind of used to seeing with it. It just looks great. The Darkness shows up to talk to him, and Jackie shows up to talk to him and brings his Darklings and everything. That goes nowhere.
Yeah. Even the Darklings are like, this guy's a weirdo.
Yeah, they're like, okay, we're out of here. I thought he was, at one point when I was reading it, I had to read it twice because I thought he was going to take him with him for some reason, but that wasn't the case. He was saying, let's go, Freud, and he was talking to one of the Darklings, and they just wanted to get out of there. So there you go. There's our 2 panels. Like I said, if you're a Darkness fan, this is one of those ones you need to get a hold of. If you're a Batman fan and you like Silvestri, this is going to Venn diagram, you're in the middle. All right, man. Well, there we did it. Anything else before we get into plugs?
I think that's it.
All right, very good. What do you got going on over there, Chris Armstrong?
Well, not a whole lot going on my side of the fence. I do have a couple other movie podcasts that I do with my buddy AJ, Small Screeners. We look at direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. We kind of just talk about whatever movie stuff we want. We're on a bit of a hiatus while we try and figure out what we're going to do going forward. I think we might start doing Small Screeners on a more limited basis, maybe just doing those during the summer, and then finding stuff to do on Because Movies, just to make it a little easier for us to find time to get these episodes out. Plus, I have to figure out a way to get the recording and editing done
right
for episodes. But yeah, the Small Screener specifically has a lot of comic book issues or comic-related episodes in the backlog. There's an episode we did on The Punisher from 1989. We did Batman the Red Hood. We covered Justice League The New Frontier with Jesse here. So there's stuff there for the comic book fans as well.
Oh, yes, indeed. And then what did we just recently dropped on Christmas? Me, you, and Evan Bevins got together and did a source material episode on Marvel 2-in-1 number 8, right? Yeah, where it was Ghost Rider and the ever-loving Blue-Eyed Thing getting together and telling a Steve Gerber tells us a tale, including those guys, a Christmas tale nonetheless. And
Johnny Blaze.
Yeah, buddy. A lot of fun there. And of course, the Unspoken Issues podcast that we do here, 90s comics all the time. Recently, I did some solo episodes, about 10 to 15 minutes apiece, on all 8 stories in the 1993 Marvel Holiday Special, which was a lot of fun. Evan Bevins and myself get together and we talk Marvel Snap. We should have a new show coming up here probably at the beginning of next month in January, so keep an eye out for that. But with that being said, we are going to get out of here. That over there is Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.
Get out of here.
What are you doing, you wise guy?